I'm very excited to share that this season I've partnered with one of my new favourite brands, Current Body. You may have seen Current Body's LED light therapy masks on social media or in the leading fashion magazine's list of game changers for skin, and with good reason. It is 31% more powerful than other LED masks and has been proven to reduce wrinkles by 24% in just 4 weeks, as well as helping even skin tone, reduce redness, and minimise the appearance of pores. I couldn't believe it either, but this is why it works. The mask uses clinically proven wavelengths, red and near infrared. The red light waves accelerate collagen production within the skin, whilst near infrared wavelengths boost blood circulation, leaving the skin glowing, plump and youthful. You only need to pop it on for 10 minutes, at least 3 to 5 times a week. It is 100% safe, pain-free and hands-free, so you can sit back and watch some telly. Or my guilty secret is I use it as an excuse for a little meditation whilst letting my mask do its job. So if you're ready to invest in your skin's future, head to the link in my Instagram bio and use my discount code StyleDNA for 15% off. Your skin will thank you too. Today, I'm going on a sartorial journey with designer, businessman, author and TV presenter Patrick Grant. Perhaps best known for his role in the TV show The Great British Sewing Bee, Grant is a man who has a lot to say about clothes. How many we buy, how we value them, what they're made from, and importantly, who made them and where. Patrick's career in fashion has spanned almost 2 decades. In that time, he has rebuilt the Savile Row tailor, Norton Sons, relaunched Eat Out's, for which he won Menswear Designer of the Year at the British Fashion Awards, and built the most successful designer collaboration in Debenham's history with Hammond & Co. In 2015, Patrick bought the ailing Blackburn clothing manufacturer Cookson Clegg, saving the factory from closure. In 2016, he created his campaigning clothes brand, Community Clothing, which supports local clothing and textile manufacturers across the UK. Hello and welcome, Patrick. God, you're undoubtedly a man on a mission.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of your most recent projects has been to create this plastic-free sportswear collection, which, I mean, congratulations. I can only imagine the challenges because sportswear is basically 95% plastic.
I mean, 99.999% plastic. There's almost no non-plastic in sportswear these days. And I think what's been really interesting, having launched it a couple of weeks ago, is that so many people have said, oh, I never thought about it as being plastic.
Yeah.
You know, we're very aware of plastic in lots of areas in our lives, but lots and lots of people are unaware that polyester, acrylic, nylon, polyamide, you know, all of these things, you know, vegan leather is plastic.
Yep.
You know, so many things that we never really think about in our lives as being plastic are plastic. And the really dreadful thing is that because we now throw so much of this stuff away, and because so much of it is really not very biodegradable at all. In fact, some of the materials like elastane, we don't think have any mechanism of biodegrading. This stuff just never goes away. And a third of all the ocean microplastics are fibers from our clothes, and that stuff is working its way up the food chain. And I mean, it's causing so many problems. And we don't need it. This is the thing, you know.
And what's interesting to me is even your organic, not your organic cotton T-shirt, but an organic T-shirt, if that hasn't been sewn with 100% cotton, it will not biodegrade. It will not biodegrade.
No, and almost none of them are.
Yeah.
Nobody sews with... Almost every sewing factory in the world, almost every 100% cotton T-shirt, whether it's organic cotton or non-organic cotton, is sewn with polyester thread.
And so that's the sort of the greenwashing in the industry, really, isn't it?
Well, it's not just that. It's just that people don't think about it.
Yeah.
You know, I think so many people in our industry have a background which is on the arts side and the creative side of fashion, and very few these days have a background in the science and engineering side of fashion. And it used to be the case that, you know, big clothing retailers had teams of scientists. Everybody from Marks and Spencer's to Debenhams had people who were experts in every aspect of the science of the clothing that they produced. And as things have got cheaper, they've had to get rid of those experts. And most people now really don't know that much about the science of it. And there are a lot of people bluffing.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people outright just telling fibs. And, people go with the easy option. And as you alluded to, it took us nearly 5 years to develop all of the different bits that went into this product because everybody had stopped doing it. Simple things like the elastic that goes into the waistband. The elastic in running shorts is elastane, which is an oil-based polymer. And nobody was making a natural rubber waistband elastic.
So that was my next question. How do you deal with the stretch element that we need in sportswear?
Well, so the stretch in sportswear comes in various different guises. You have the mechanical stretch in the fabric, which you understand. So a knitted jersey is made of lots of interlocking loops, and when you pull them, they stretch apart, and when you take the force away, they relax. Now that stretch has a certain amount of recovery, which for years and years and years was fine because we didn't know any better. Today, of course, we have added to that the kind of chemical stretch that you get within something like elastane, where you've got polymer chains being elongated and recovering, which gives you that kind of tight, quick recovery that we've all got used to in running tights, cycling shorts, all of that sort of stuff. At the moment, we don't have an answer to that. That we don't have an answer to. We don't have the money, the resources, and all the rest of it. But, you can do a mechanical version of that. It just won't have the stretch. Everybody used to run in, early Ron Hill tracksters, which until the early 70s were leggings that just didn't have any of that chemical stretch. It was all mechanical. And we were all fine with it. Nobody needed figure-hugging, bum-tight leggings back then. We all kind of lived perfectly happily without them.
Until the Kardashians came along.
Until big juicy bums came into fashion and we all wanted to show them off. But, that is a consumer thing. We have to deal with... If we want to make this stuff go away, and we need to make it go away, we have to change the way we think about the clothes we wear.
But surely, isn't there an element of, when you've got elastane or lycra or whatever you want to call it, of the support that gives an athlete or a jogger?
It really makes this is the argument I think some people give, but you have to look at the statistics. I mean, the world record for the 1,500 metres from the point... So Seb Coe, I think 1980 Olympics, Seb Coe won the gold medal in the 1980 Olympics wearing entirely natural clothing. There was no elastane in anything that he wore then. He set a world record then that today is only 3% faster. And that includes all the changes in nutrition, the changes in training, everything else that you add in that will also have improved those times. It's a minuscule change. So actually the performance side of it is really not that great.
Okay, I'm going to throw a slight spanner in the works there. Us girls with bosoms, they need supporting.
They do.
When we're running.
When you're bouncing up and down.
Thank you. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So
that is a difficult one.
Are there any of these big fabric manufacturers, are they working on the science to help us get over this lycra hurdle?
People are working on the science, but it is not an easy one to overcome.
Yeah.
People are looking at plant-based elastics. I mean, natural rubber is fantastic, and if you had the money and the wherewithal to do it, you could probably produce a good woven. You could probably produce a good textile that incorporated natural rubber, but natural rubber is much more expensive. I mean, this is the problem. We're also used to things being cheap. Elastane is cheap because it's made of oil and that's abundant and it's easy to come by. If you have to go to start using natural rubber, and think about the quantity of athleisure clothing that we wear, it is utterly ubiquitous. So, you watch girls going to school in the morning, they're all wearing a black puffer and a pair of black leggings.
Yep.
And that didn't used to be the case. You've got to. We now need to find an incredible amount of this material just to clothe everyday people in their everyday clothes. So that's a real issue. But there are people working on it. It is tricky, and so far there are no suitable answers. But elastane is a real problem. It just doesn't decompose naturally, or biodegrade naturally. And even with chemical intervention, it doesn't really break down either. You just end up with this sort of soupy, gluey slurry, even if you try and chemically break it down. So all of that stretch clothing we're wearing, frankly, is an absolute disaster for the natural world. Yeah, I mean, plastic is a big one because, again, the amount of clothing that we wear now, if it's not as easy, it's not as easy as simply saying, right, well, we just switch from using plastic to using natural materials, because there are not enough natural materials on the planet to make the quantity of clothes that we produce now. So we have to tie that in with a massive reduction in what we buy.
Which brings me on to my next point. I know you're busy with numerous projects, but you're writing not one book, but 2 books.
Well, hopefully written.
Good.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Well, almost. Yeah, although I just sent a message from my publisher this morning. So very nearly written. So I've got 2 books that will be out in the spring. One of them is very straightforward. It is a book about bespoke tailoring. So
lovely.
It is a book. It's sort of behind the scenes. It's Savile Row. It's the real stars of Savile Row, who are those people who produce the clothes, and also the people that produce the textiles and everything else. So it's an homage to all of those incredible craftsmen who are the people that really make this world tick. And it is also a detailed set of instructions, should you wish to follow them, for how to make a shirt, a jacket, a pair of trousers and a waistcoat, which nobody, I think, actually has ever done before. That's
really beautiful, because it actually talks back to your passion for crafting and making and all of that.
Yeah, it honestly has been an utterly horrendous process. The last book which discussed the method used by Savile Row tailors was published by a magazine called The Tailor and Cutter in the 1920s. I think it was 1926. And its instructions, I mean, really, there's a 3-volume set of the kind of art of bespoke tailoring, and they're quite sought after, and we've got one in the shop. But you really need to be a tailor to be able to follow the instructions. I mean, the instructions for making trousers are 6 pages long, and I think our instructions for making trousers are about 40 pages long. And, and what I've done is we've documented the entire process for one of our coat makers, one of our trouser makers, one of our waistcoat makers, and Emma Willis very kindly let me muscle into her workshop in Gloucester. So we followed their shirt making method. So it's one particular person's method. Every tailor on Savile Row, every tailoring house will employ multiple tailors, but each tailor will have a slightly different method. So, Chris, who makes my trousers, the way he does every single part of that is particular to him, and it comes from the person who taught him. He learnt in the 1960s. He's been on Savile Row, and he's made he's made trousers for the most incredible array of people. But it is a sort of celebration of the craft of bespoke tailoring. And if you like to sew and you fancy having a go at hand making a jacket in the Savile Row method, then,
how inspiring.
Well, I hope so. As much as anything, I think it is important to historically document this craft. Yeah. We are very bad in this country at looking after our heritage crafts. In Japan, they have they are described as living treasures. They have this idea of living treasures, and every ancient craft that they believe is important to their cultural heritage is protected by law, and the government provides money to ensure that there is always a master and an apprentice on every one of the old crafts that they consider important. In this country, we don't have that. Luckily, we have the Heritage Craft Association, of which King Charles is the president, I think. But that organisation is a private organisation that requires charitable donations to keep alive all of these amazing things. Crafts, and lots of them are very endangered. Things like, paper marbling and armour japanning and sword making. Yeah. And I did a documentary last year about the making of the uniform for the coronation. And obviously those uniforms are covered with extraordinary gold wire embroidery, but there is only one gold wire drawer left in the UK. So when that person disappears, there will be no more gold wire to make gold wire embroidery. So, anybody listening who has money in their pocket and wants to preserve an old craft, the Heritage Craft Association really
needs it.
But
Shout out.
it should be something that we as a nation look after.
Yeah.
You know, this is our cultural making heritage, and we are a nation of extraordinary makers.
Yeah. So that's one book. What's the other one? Are you allowed to share a little?
The other book is, so that book is called The Savile Row Suit. The other book is called Less, and it is essentially the philosophy behind community clothing, which is really straightforward. Have fewer things, have better things, and make those things locally, supporting fantastic jobs for people that really need them in all across the country. And it is, you know, it's effectively, it's the founding principles of what we're about. So it's a book that's about consumerism. It's about the evolution of quality and the evolution of work. You know, we used to employ lots of people in this country making things, and now we have outsourced all of that making to other nations, and lots of people are really struggling for something to do. And just reading a piece in the Times last week about the amount of young people requiring therapy because they don't have, they don't have a satisfying life. They don't leave school with good qualifications. They don't have good work to go to. There are a lot of people that are being let down by the kind of education system and, you know, our desire for cheaper and cheaper clothes.
And the thing that frustrates me is the lack of looking after our beautiful, handcrafted, or just beautifully made with love, our basic T-shirts, all of that. Everything's got very disposable.
Yeah. Everything has got incredibly disposable. I mean, we only need to look at how many pieces of clothing we make. I mean, the year before, I think, you know, there were 100 billion pieces of clothing made on the planet.
It just saddens me because
statistic.
Actually, I think, you know, part of who we are should be looking after what we put on our bodies.
Yeah. Well, I think almost everything. You know, I look around this, you know, your gorgeous flat, and I see lots of things. You know, it's surrounded by high quality objects, and you know, I think we used to treasure all of the things we owned. You know, we used to buy things with great care. Even as, you know, when I was a kid, because things were a little more expensive, we took more time to choose them with great care. You know, I would go to the same clothes shop 7 times, 8 times, try something on, go back the next Saturday, try it on again, think to myself, can I really afford it? How often am I going to wear it? Those conversations we had in our own heads, and everything, and that was the same with, you know, mugs and tables and chairs and everything that we bought thoughtfully.
Yes.
And now, because things are so cheap, we no longer need to give any thought to them. And so people are buying things, you know, with absolutely no consideration. You can buy a piece of clothing now for less than the cost of a cup of coffee. So why do you need to give it a thought? And that is, of course, terrible in all sorts of ways. And, you know, we used to employ about 8.5 million people in this country making all the everyday things that we have around us. And for some reason, we decided, I think as a nation, that was somehow, you know, a thing of the past. And, you know, we let all of those jobs go. We outsourced them to other countries. And now we've got millions and millions of people who are leaving school, you know, people who may not be academically ready for university, or they may never be the sort of person that wants to go to university. Those people have to have, you know, we need to find good jobs for everyone, and this stuff could be doing that.
And I bemoan the time that we just did away with our polytechnics because, you know, actually making things, doing things can be such a rewarding career. Well, not everyone has to go to university to get a degree in God knows what.
God knows what, exactly.
We're here to talk about your personal style today, your likes, your dislikes.
Yeah.
So I just wondered, coming here today, how did you decide what you were going to wear?
Well, I'm wearing what I wear every day.
Right. Talk me through it.
Well, I am. It's chilly today, so I'm wearing a pair of leather boots. They are Red Wing. They're made in Minnesota by the original Red Wing boot company. I'm wearing socks that were made in South Wales. They are actually Etor socks, and I've probably had them. They're navy blue. I've probably had them. They're made by a firm called Corgi in Ammanford, and they make. They're the Royal Warrant holder for socks, but they make amazing socks. I'm wearing community clothing, what are called the cameraman pants.
Yeah,
so
great.
The cameraman pant is a pant that I saw one of the cameramen on Sewing Bee the year before last was wearing this Japanese workwear pant that he'd bought in a shop in Tokyo, and I really liked them, so I took a photo of them, and we did a version of them for community clothing, which we launched last year, and they were hugely successful for men, and so we did a version for women as well called the Camera Woman pant. And they are just, they are a heavy, I think they're a 320 gram cotton Panama canvas construction, and they've aged really well. I mean, these were actually a sample that I got off the line in August last year, and I've pretty much worn them every day since. I'm wearing a navy jumper and a navy t-shirt, so I wear a lot of navy blue. This jumper, I think I put it on in November, and I haven't taken it off since. It's a big 8-ply Shetland wool jumper. It's made by William Lockie, who make jumpers for community clothing. They're in Hawick. They make the Royal Regiment of Scotland jumpers.
Yes, because it seems quite regimental.
It's got suede patches on the elbow and the shoulder. It's very similar to a jumper that we did for Torts a few years ago that Victoria Beckham bought for David for his Christmas, which I was very pleased about. It's just a really heavy, thick, chunky, bomb-proof jumper that, you know, is incredibly warm, and, you know, it's got that sort of loosey 80s sort of vibe to it. It's very relaxed, and I love it. And when it gets a bit warmer, I'll take it off and I'll put it back in the cupboard and I'll get it out again in 8 months' time. And that's kind of how I live with my wardrobe. I have things I wear all the time. I have lots and lots of navy crew necks. So I have lots of navy crew neck t-shirts, long sleeve t-shirts, lightweight John Smedley knitted lightweight cotton crew neck jumpers, midweight jumpers, lambswool jumpers. I mean, I mostly live in the same stuff all the time, which makes life very easy because I take things off, I fold them up, I put them down, and I get up in the morning and that's it.
Is all your clothing made in Britain?
Almost all of it. I mean, my shoes are made in America,
yes.
But I wear a lot of trickers too. So
yeah.
If I'm not wearing Red Wings, I'm wearing trickers, and I've got 5 pairs of trickers, 2 black pairs and 3 different brown pairs, but all the same kind of heavy, you know, commando sole. Actually, I've got aren't commando sole, but I mean, at least 2 of them have been resold. Almost everything I wear is I know where everything comes from. Everything I wear, I know its provenance.
You're probably most visible through your role in British Sewing Bee. Would you say you have a judging uniform for that?
Well, I'm mostly, I mean, pretty much. I mostly wear a jacket and trousers, and I mostly wear a regular shirt, and mostly I wear a tie. But and if I think the first time I didn't wear a tie, people were sort of up in arms on Twitter, and then the first time I think, I wear a long sleeve polo shirt in this coming series, and I imagine people will lose their minds.
I was going to ask, were the BBC very prescriptive?
BBC have nothing to say about what I wear at all, apart from that, annoyingly, I really can't wear much pattern because digital cameras are terrible at strobing.
Yeah.
And I think they get worse as the technology gets better, in inverted commas. They get less able to cope with patterns. So almost everything I wear is just a shade or a texture.
So you can't wear a beautiful Prince of Wales check or...
No.
Just spinning on to Norton Sons, because you talked about when you bought it, it didn't really have its own identity.
Yeah.
And I just would love to understand how you went about creating that identity of an existing brand. And would you say its identity is very much who you are?
I think it's quite heavily tied to me personally. I mean, Norton's was interesting because it had been in existence for 185 odd years when I took it over, And it had, in different periods, had strong identities. There was a head cutter in the 1960s called John Granger who took it in a very sort of preppy, Hamptonian, East Coast American, and he travelled a lot on the East Coast of the States, and he built a very big business over there. And it sort of exuded a sort of Hamptonsy charm, and even the look of the shop sort of felt a bit, East Coast American more than it felt London. But that had died away, and actually it had sort of lost its way. And I just wanted to restore it to what it sort of did best, which was be just a very good tailor's. And I celebrated the fact that it was small. I think the owner prior to me, Nick, had sort of shied away from talking about its size because he felt somehow embarrassed that we only made a few hundred suits a year. And I thought that was part of the charm of it. We also instituted a policy, or I also instituted a policy of only using British-made cloths and talking about the stories and the provenance. And it was a big part of Norton's was, you could come in and you could buy a tweed from us, from somebody like Ardalanish on the Isle of Mull, where I'd met the sheep that the wool had come from, and the weaver worked on them in a weaving shed on the farm, and it was we could tell the story of these textiles, and of course in the back in the workshop were the people cutting and sewing the clothes. So provenance is a really important part of how we build quality around objects. And again, it's entirely the same now with community clothing. I can tell you at community clothing, where all of our products come from. I know where the textiles have come from. I know in the case of this jumper where the wool has come from, and where it was spun, and where it was knitted and finished. Being able to attach a story of where and who has made something is incredibly important to our understanding of quality. I mean, the reason we buy handmade ceramics, and I'm looking at a cup on your table over there, you can tell that is a handmade cup, and that will have been made by an individual craftsperson. And I've got cups in my house, and that, I mean, most of the cups in my kitchen are handmade because I really like handmade ceramics, but I know who the maker is, and you can see the marks that their hands have made. And not only are they better quality objects because they will be, their integrity, physical integrity will be higher, but understanding who has made them gives them more value to us, makes them more precious to us, allows us to feel closer to them, and therefore increases their value and makes us want to cherish them and keep them. If you've got something where you have no idea at all where it's come from, how can you possibly feel a connection to it? And I think that is what is important. It was important for Norton's, it was important for Torts, and it's equally important for community clothing, because quality is everything. And a big part of quality is where and how it is crafted.
Yeah, I think so true. And in terms of the style, did you find yourself reducing the offer of Norton's?
Well, we just so my first head cutter at Norton's was a guy called John Kent, and John had a particular style, and we had this one fantastic coat maker called Wally Pattenden, who had been in the business for a long, long time, since the 70s. And between John and Wally, they made me my first single-breasted coat at Norton's. And it had a very particular, proportion. It had a very particular shape to it, a certain amount of roping on the sleeve head. The suppression at the waist was just enough, but not too much. It had a sort of natural chest. It wasn't overly chesty. And the lapel shape, that had this ever so subtle kind of round on the lapel that was Wally's pattern. The individual, so the cutter will cut certain parts of your clothing, but the tailor, coat maker, trouser maker, waistcoat maker, will add certain bits to it. And that pattern of Wally's for that lapel plus John's cutting became the blueprint for the Norton Sons style, and that became set. But part of developing the brand was good luck. Partly it was me. I said, this is what we want to do. It's a simple offer. We're small. We understand where everything comes from. But also, we got very lucky. Got introduced to Kim Jones, who ended up coming back and having us make pieces for his catwalk shows for a couple of years. And through Kim, we got to meet Alexander McQueen, who became a good customer, and Christopher Kane, who we've made clothes for now for over a dozen years, made for his collections and made for him personally. You know, we've made from Christian Louboutin became a big customer, and I mean all sorts of people. Lots of young London fashion designers kind of came to us, and that became part of who we were.
And working with any of those designers, did any of their requests or style rub off on you personally, do you think?
No, it didn't. No, I mean, I was very clear about what I liked and what I didn't like. And actually, most of what we were doing with those guys was women's wear anyway. I mean, obviously, we were making clothes for them personally. I mean, we made quite a lot for Lee McQueen. And actually, he took quite a lot from me, which was really nice.
But that's lovely,
he's one of the world's one of the most talented designers of all time, and he's asking me what I would do.
But the collaborative process in design is it's so inspiring, isn't it? I often talk about clothes being our armor. You know, in terms of how we project ourselves to the world, and sometimes how we cocoon ourselves from the world. And I know that you sadly lost your father before time during COVID, and I just wondered if your approach to dressing changed during that time.
I always really liked the way my dad dressed, and he and my mum were both. They didn't have huge wardrobes, but it was about a few good things. And my dad had lots of suits in the wardrobe that were bought, and quite a lot that were bought secondhand, and then he had altered for him. So I've still got those, and I treasure them. There are things that were his that I wear now, that are the most precious things I have. And I also, I have an old sweatshirt that my granny bought me. She worked well into her late 70s, possibly even into her early 80s. She kept working. One of the things she worked for Citizens Advice Bureau one day a week. She worked for the Duke of Buccleuch doing tours of his house, and then she worked for one of the charity shops in Galashiels, and this sweatshirt came in, and she bought it for me, and she thought I'd like it. And I still wear. I nearly wore it today, but I'm in navy blue. But it's a sort of plum-coloured 80s sweatshirt that she bought. So all of those things that have stories attached and sentimental memories attached to them are important. And my dad's clothes, I've got loads. I've got lots of ties of his, and certainly I've got his old dinner suit that is absolutely bomb-proof. It's like a sort of 22-ounce Baratheia.
I was going to say they were heavy and thick, weren't they?
Yeah, I've got one of his British warm overcoats. I've got evening tails, which of course I very rarely wear. I've got morning tails, which of course I also very rarely wear. But I've got his cummerbund, the dinner suit. Even though I wear I mostly wear a newer, lighter dinner suit. I wear my dad's cummerbund often. My dinner suit's a three-piece with a waistcoat, but quite often I prefer to wear a cummerbund than the thing. But I've also got various dress waistcoats that were his, which sometimes I can substitute in. And I've got his old Marcella white tie, which I think I've probably worn about twice in my life. But my Commem ball at Oxford, I had to, it was a white tie ball, so I've worn it for that.
Now, your Instagram handle is Patrick Grantism. Would you say you have any isms in your approach to how you dress or how you style yourself?
I don't know. I think everything that I do in clothes now, my style has got simpler and simpler and simpler. I remember a time when I was in my 20s when I sort of worked out what things really worked for me in terms of the cuts of trousers and what I like to wear. But as I've got older, it's got simpler and simpler and simpler. So I don't know what the ism would be, but sort of, it's not quite minimalism, but it's definitely, I guess probably it is actually. I'm just looking at what I'm wearing. Everything is navy blue apart from my shoes. But I was a big John Pawson fan as early 20-year-old.
Yeah.
And that his big book, was it
Minimalism or minimal?
Was it minimum? Well, I can't remember what it was called now. Anyway, but it was
Maybe
brilliant.
it was called Minimum.
Minimum, I think it was.
Probably got it somewhere
here.
here.
Probably have, yeah. But I was very much inspired by that, and I nearly became an architect. Once I'd finished my undergrad engineering degree, I went back to night school and did A-level art and got a place to study architecture at Liverpool, but I didn't take it up. It's always been sort of simple shapes. It's always been about shapes and silhouettes and texture more than it is about pattern. I don't wear a lot of pattern.
Do you have a style icon?
No, I don't think I do. I mean, there are certain people whose style I really like, but it's mostly people who've got a kind of a clear and distinct sort of individual style that doesn't look like it's built by somebody else.
If someone were to describe your style in 3 words, your style DNA, what would you want those 3 words to be?
I think it would definitely be simple, and it would probably be navy, because that would be ridiculous not to include that word. But I think it's quality. You know, I think you can see in the things that I wear that they are well made, and I care very much about that. I like things that age well. I like, the shoes. Not only do they get more comfortable, but they get more character the more you wear them. I think especially men's shoes, which tend to be a bit heavier, the more you wear them and polish them, they develop these interesting, beautiful patinas about them. And it's the same with, good denim. Yeah. It's the same with good canvas in a pair of trousers. I mean, that twill that you're wearing, good things age well. And I think you can see that in good clothes. I think what's really sad about modern clothing is that most modern clothing has nothing in it that will age in any interesting way. In fact, the time that most modern clothing is at its best is the moment before it's even been unpacked and put on a hanger, because it doesn't even sit well on a hanger anymore, and let alone wash well and wear well.
Would you say you had a worst fashion moment at any point?
Oh, I mean, some terrible ones. Yeah, absolutely. I experimented wildly as a late teen and in my early 20s. But thankfully, I grew up before the digital camera. So there may be photographs in the bottom of kind of cardboard boxes tucked away in people's cupboards, but there's nothing on the internet to prove it. But
aren't we
some shockers.
So relieved about that?
Yeah, I mean, I remember, when I was 16 in 1988, which was, the sort of
good one.
Revival of the kind of acid house era and the start of all that kind of Manchester. And I was wearing 22-inch bell-bottom jeans with paisley hoodies and all manner of utter horrors. But but it was good at the time. It was great.
And your hair? What was your hair like?
I mean, I had all sorts of things. I mean, I had very long hair at one point. I had completely shorn. I mean, my hair's very short today, but I had hair this short that was kind of Arctic silver and a kind of violety silver. I lived in San Francisco for a while and hung out with a lot of hairdressers from Sassoons over there, and they did fun things to my hair. And yeah, I wore a sarong years before David Beckham wore it. So I wandered around San Francisco in the early 90s wearing a sarong, and I had fun with clothes, but luckily there's very little evidence of it.
I can remember some of mine, which I won't talk about. Oh no, we're not. This is about you, not me. I always think as men get older, they get more distinguished. And I know you're in the face of the camera all the time. Would you ever consider any form of age prevention?
I don't know. I really don't. I mean, I actually... I mean, for years I used a bit of moisturizer, And I did use it fairly routinely. And
That sounds like past tense.
yeah, well, only because I used to be, I was an ambassador for Sisley for a while, and they used to send me lots of good stuff. And then all the people that I dealt with disappeared, and it's harder to get stuff out of them anymore. And I got used to this incredible quality of stuff that's sort of too expensive to buy for yourself, for me anyway. Because despite years in this industry, I earn a lot less now than I did in my mid-20s when I had a well-paid job in a normal...
But loving it far more.
But loving it far more. But, I mean, my skincare regime really kind of starts from the inside and works out. So I'm pretty healthy. I drink almost no alcohol at all. I mean, I probably have 2 or 3 drinks a year. I maybe have a glass of champagne on a birthday.
Impressive, Patrick.
Yeah. I don't smoke. I exercise pretty well. I've been doing intermittent fasting for 4 years, I guess now.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, and my skin is in good shape. So actually, I don't need to do it, and I don't mind being grey. I mean, the greyness in the face. Luckily, I mean, my hair's starting to go a little bit grey, but not that bad. But I don't mind it.
Let's talk about travel.
Yeah.
Do you have a particular airport look?
Well, it's the same. It's the same as everything else. I'm in it. I don't. Well, that's the nice thing. I've sort of worked out a uniform for life that does for most things. You know, in the summer, it's I've got these really great etorts. Kind of they were a sort of 50s naval short, big pleated, with these really nice pocket flaps on the back pockets, and I've got a couple of pairs of those that do me, and they're navy blue, obviously. I've got a couple of pairs of those. We now do them for community clothing as well. But I wouldn't travel in a pair of shorts. But I mean, all my shoes are comfortable. I don't feel like, I need to wear joggers on the plane, because actually all my clothes are really comfortable.
Yeah. What luggage do you use?
Luggage-wise, I've got 2 really old Muji canvas holdalls, both of which are kind of hand luggage compliant, even the small hand luggage compliant size, and that's what I take. Most of my packing is books usually on holiday.
Great.
Camera, books, a few bits of clothing.
If you didn't own the tailors Norton Sons, which tailor would be your favourite, do you think?
I don't know. It's an interesting question, actually. I mean, I do really like Norton's because it looks quite a lot like how I would like it to look. But there are lots. I mean, the lovely thing about Savile Row is that the street is filled with brilliant tailors. Yeah. I think in terms of the look, there was a period when Kilgour's look, before Carlo went too mad, where their look was really just spot on. Yeah. But I really love Henry Poole. Like Simon and the guys at Poole's are brilliant. They're lovely. Huntsman is great. I mean, Anderson and Shepherd is not my style. That kind of cardy, drapey thing, just not my bag. But it's beautifully executed. I mean, they're all really good. This is the great thing about Savile Row. You've got sort of something for everyone, and you go where you feel comfortable. Yeah. Because everybody makes brilliant quality stuff on that street.
Yeah. I mean, outside the row, is there a particular brand that you admire?
There really isn't. I mean, there are people. I mean, there are certain brands that I used to like a great deal, but they've sort of strayed away from the formula. I like brands that make their own stuff. Actually, in the book that I'm doing, I'm doing an appendix of all the people that make stuff and sell it themselves, sort of artisan makers. There are very few of those, but I like people that make things. I mean, lots of the knitwear guys sell their own stuff, and I really like that.
Do you buy vintage?
Yeah.
And where are your favourite haunts for that?
So there's a couple of places. There's a place in Brooklyn that for years and years I've bought stuff. Nick Sullivan at American Esquire put me onto it when he had sort of been banned from buying any more clothing by his wife. He's like, right, I can tell you about this place now, because I don't need it anymore. But I'm not going to say what it is, but it's in Brooklyn. And it's amazing. It's run by a couple of Japanese people. I like Armstrong's in Edinburgh. I buy bits and pieces from them. They've now got a number of shops. Armstrong's has been around since I was a kid. I bought stuff from Armstrong's when I was a teenager, and 40 years later, it's still going. In fact, it's got more stores now than it did when I was younger. eBay, I buy tons on eBay. I'm always on eBay. But everything in my house is from eBay. I very rarely buy new stuff, and I buy stuff from auction rooms and Lots Road down the road.
It's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah. There's bits in my house from Lots Road. And
let's turn on to some quick fire questions.
Right.
So these have got to be quick answers, Patrick.
Okay, all right, fine.
What fashion advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
Don't buy those really crusty Miu Miu shoes. You won't wear them that much.
Which fashion trend would you most like to see make a comeback?
Oh, men's, like peacockism in men's. It is kind of making a comeback anyway.
Yeah.
That sort of late 60s, early 70s thing.
What fashion or beauty trend would you consign to Room 101?
I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the goatee. Let's put that in there.
Great. Last impulse buy?
Again, I just don't really buy much new clothing.
Well, that's great.
Impulse. Oh, I'll tell you what it was. All right. I bought a pair of amazing hand-knitted socks at Kew Gardens at the Winter Lights thing. They've got a gift shop at Kew Gardens, and I bought a pair for myself and a pair for my girlfriend. Big, thick, hand-knitted, chunky, multicoloured socks. I can't remember the name of the brand, but they sell them in the Kew Gardens shop. They're amazing.
Brilliant. Views on tattoos?
I don't have any. And I suspect people will come to regret them in 15, 20 years' time.
Grooming or well-being treatment you couldn't give up?
Yeah, none of that, really. I mean, I get a £10 haircut from Passerini's in Blackburn.
You're fantastically low maintenance. High end or high street?
High end.
Crocs, cute or puke?
I'm not a Crocs fan.
Birkenstocks or brogues?
Oh, I like both. I can't. Both are a big part of my wardrobe.
Sports luxe or rock and roll?
I don't know. I think probably sports luxe.
Savile Row or jeans?
Savile Row.
Dinner jacket?
What else am I going to say to that one?
Dinner jacket, black, white or colour?
Black. Well, actually, midnight blue.
I was going to say, I bet you're a navy blue dinner jacket.
Yeah, very midnight blue. My new ones. My old one. My dad's old one was black, but both of the contemporary ones I've got are midnight.
Double-breasted, single-breasted?
Double, I think. I wear more double than single, I think.
Cargos or chinos?
I wear these cameraman pants. They're probably more like a cargo than a chino.
Trend or style?
Style.
Colour or monochrome?
Well, mono blue.
Pattern or plain?
Plain.
Hoarder or editor?
No, I'm quite an editor, yeah.
Charity shop
that's probably a lie, actually, because I've got so many pieces of clothes in my archive, but they're not really, they're sort of work.
Do you separate your archive out?
My archive just ends up, or my clothes end up going in and then just disappearing, and then 6 years later I'll be like, oh, there's that coat. I wondered where that had gone. Charity
shop or resale?
Charity shop. Yeah, make your old stuff do good for some people.
Boxers or briefs?
Briefs.
Budgie smugglers or board shorts?
Budgies.
Beanie or baseball cap?
Beanie far more than a baseball cap, yeah.
And finally,
I don't mind either.
At the end of the day, what do you or don't you wear in bed?
I don't.
Patrick, such fun having you here, talking all things fashion and style. I could have chatted all afternoon, but thank you for your time.
My pleasure.